The alarm screamed through the research station as Commander Valterra's claws clicked nervously against her console. Deep beneath the surface of the dead world Kepler-4 for 2b, her team had been digging for 3 months. What they found today made her wish they had never come to this cursed place. "Show me the readings again," she ordered, her voice tight with worry. The young technician, his blue skin pale with fear, brought up the energy scans on the main screen. "Commander, the crystals are putting out power levels we've never seen before, and the patterns, they're not random." Valterra stared at the massive crystal formations that filled the underground chamber. Each one was twice as tall as her 8-foot frame, glowing with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The ancient ruins surrounding them were covered in symbols that made her head ache just looking at them. "Keshin, what do you make of these markings?" she called to the team's language expert. The old scholar shuffled forward, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly as he studied the wall carvings. His people, the Zenthari, were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to decode ancient languages. But these symbols seemed to resist all his efforts. "Commander, I have translated fragments, but they speak of impossible things. The text mentions beacons that will come when darkness threatens to swallow the light of worlds." Keshian's voice was puzzled. "But beacons are just old stories. Legends our grandparents told to frighten children." Valterra had grown up hearing those same legends, tales of mysterious guides who appeared during the worst times in galactic history. When entire civilizations faced destruction, the beacons would somehow show up and lead them to safety. Every species had similar stories, but they were just myths. They had to be. "Commander," the communications officer's voice cracked with excitement, "we're getting reports from 17 other dig sites across the galaxy. They're all finding the same thing. Crystal formations just like these, all activating at the same time." The main crystal in their chamber suddenly flared brighter, and Valterra felt a strange tingling in her mind. For just a moment, she could have sworn she heard something, not with her ears, but deeper, like a voice calling from very far away. "Sir, the quantum resonance is increasing," reported the technician. "Whatever these things are, they're trying to communicate with something. The signal is broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't even exist." Valterra walked closer to the largest crystal, ignoring the worried protests of her team. The ancient text carved around its base seemed to shift and move in her peripheral vision. When she looked directly at it, the symbols were still, but she could feel them trying to tell her something important. "These ruins are older than any civilization we know," Keshian said, running his scanning device over the walls. "The dating puts them at over 3 million years old. But look at this preservation, it's like they were built yesterday." The chamber stretched deeper into the planet than their equipment could measure. Every surface was covered with the same repeating message in dozens of different ancient languages. Valterra didn't need Keshin's translations to understand the basic meaning. Something was coming. Something dark, and the beacons were the only hope. "Commander, we're detecting movement in the lower levels," announced the security chief. "The passages we couldn't access before, they're opening up." As if responding to his words, a section of the wall behind the crystals began to slide away, with a sound like distant thunder. Beyond it lay a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity, lined with more of the glowing crystals. "This is bigger than we thought," Valterra whispered. "This isn't just a ruin, it's a machine. A massive machine that's been sleeping for millions of years." The temperature in the chamber dropped suddenly, and frost began forming on their equipment. The crystal's glow shifted from blue to a deep purple, and the humming sound they made changed pitch. "Commander, I'm reading massive energy buildup," the technician called out, his voice tight with panic. "Whatever this thing is doing, it's about to do it everywhere at once." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Archaeological teams on distant worlds watched in amazement and terror as ancient beacon networks came online for the first time in eons. The crystals sang with power that reached across dimensions, sending out a call that most species couldn't hear or understand. But on a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, a world that the galactic community had dismissed as hosting only primitive life, something was listening. In monitoring stations scattered across Earth's surface, human scientists stared at their instruments in confusion as impossible signals filled their screens. The beacons were calling. Just as the ancient legends had promised, they were calling for help, calling for guidance, calling for the one species in the galaxy that possessed the unique ability to answer. The only problem was that nobody, not the aliens uncovering the ruins, not the humans receiving the signals, realized what was really happening. The galaxy was about to discover that its oldest legends were true, and that the beacons they had been waiting for were closer than anyone had ever imagined. Dr. Jamin Kim rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his third cup of coffee that night. The Seoul Deep Space Monitoring Station hummed quietly around him as he stared at the strange patterns filling his computer screen. For the past 6 hours, signals had been pouring in from every direction in space, but these weren't like anything he had ever seen before. "Minho, come look at this," he called to his friend working at the next desk. These numbers are too perfect to be natural. Dr. Park Min-ho rolled his chair over, yawning as he studied the data. His eyes widened as he recognized the mathematical sequences. Jamin, this looks like the Fibonacci series, but twisted somehow. And look here, prime numbers arranged in spirals. The signals had started 3 hours ago, detected simultaneously by monitoring stations around the world. At first, the scientists thought it might be interference from a solar storm or satellite malfunction. But as more data came in, it became clear that something far more extraordinary was happening. Get Director Lee on the phone, Jamin said, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled up more readings. And call Tokyo, New York, and Sydney. We need to know if they're seeing the same thing. While Minho made the calls, Jamin stared at the impossible data streaming across his monitors. The signals weren't just mathematical, they seemed to be responding to human brain patterns. Every time he focused on a particular frequency, it would shift and change, as if it knew he was watching. Director Lee is on his way, Minho reported. And yes, every major monitoring station on Earth is picking up the same transmissions. Dr. Yoon Soyoung in Tokyo says her equipment started going crazy at exactly the same time as ours. Jamin felt a strange tingling in his head, like the feeling just before falling asleep when thoughts become fuzzy and dreamlike. But instead of becoming unclear, his mind felt sharper, more focused. The alien signals on his screen began to make sense in ways that logic couldn't explain. Minho, I think I understand part of it, he whispered. It's not just random data. It's a message, but it's written in a language that speaks directly to the mind instead of the ears. Thousands of miles away in Tokyo, Dr. Yoon Soyoung was experiencing the same phenomenon. As she studied the incoming signals, patterns began forming in her thoughts. Images of distant stars, ancient ruins, and beings she had never seen before filled her mind. But strangest of all was the overwhelming feeling that something was calling to her personally. In New York, Dr. Choi Yoon-young watched her instruments with growing excitement and fear. The signals were getting stronger by the hour, and they seemed to be focused on Earth, not on any particular country or continent, but on the entire planet, as if something in space was trying to reach every human being at once. This is impossible, she muttered to her assistant. The source of these transmissions is coming from multiple star systems, all at the same time, but they're perfectly synchronized, like parts of a single massive communication network. Back in Seoul, Director Lee arrived to find his best scientists in a state of controlled panic. The elderly man studied the data with the calm expression that had made him one of Korea's most respected researchers. But even he couldn't hide his amazement. How long have these signals been active? He asked. 6 hours and 17 minutes. Jamin replied, but Director, there's something else. Every human who's been exposed to the signals for more than an hour reports the same thing. They're starting to understand the message without knowing how. Dr. Kim Tae-won, who had just arrived from the Australian monitoring station via video link, appeared on the main screen. His usually neat hair was disheveled, and his eyes had the wide look of someone who had seen something that challenged everything he believed about the universe. Director Lee, we need to coordinate a global response, Tae-hwan said through the connection. These aren't just signals, they're instructions. And they're meant for us specifically. What kind of instructions? Director Lee asked. Minho pulled up a new analysis on his screen. The mathematical patterns, when decoded using human neural frequency mapping, translate into something like prepare for activation and ancient protocols engaged. But there are deeper layers we can't access yet. As if responding to their conversation, the signals suddenly intensified. Every human in the monitoring stations felt the same sensation, a pulling feeling in their minds, as if something vast and ancient was trying to establish a connection. Director Jamin said quietly, I don't think we're just receiving these signals. I think we're the only species that can receive them. Whatever sent this message, it was meant specifically for human beings. The implications hit everyone in the room at the same time. Earth had been considered a primitive backwater by any advanced civilization that might exist. But these signals suggested that humanity might be far more important in the cosmic scheme than anyone had ever imagined. Send word to every major space agency on the planet. Director Lee ordered, start preparing our fastest ships. Something tells me we're about to take humanity's first real step into the larger universe, whether we're ready or not. The ancient network had awakened, and it was calling its guardians home. Dr. Jamin Kim stepped out of the human transport ship onto the alien station, his heart beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. 3 weeks had passed since Earth received the mysterious signals, and now he stood face to face with creatures he had only imagined in science fiction movies. Commander Veltora watched the small human approach with curious eyes. She had expected these primitive beings to arrive in crude ships, perhaps demanding territory or resources like most species did during first contact. Instead, this human seemed drawn to something specific, the crystal chambers her team had discovered. Welcome to Research Station Kepler-4 for 2B, Veltera said through her translation device. I am Commander Veltera of the Hegemony Navy. You have traveled very far from your world. Jameen bowed politely, a gesture that seemed to surprise the alien commander. Thank you, Commander. I am Dr. Jamin Kim from Earth. We received signals that seemed to come from this location. Keshin, the elderly scholar, studied the human with his 4 eyes. Most interesting, your species was not in our database of spacefaring civilizations. How did you detect our archaeological work? That's what we're trying to understand, Jamin replied. The signals appeared on all our monitoring equipment at the same time, but they weren't just radio waves, they seemed to speak directly to our minds. Valterra's mandibles clicked together in thought. The beacon crystals have been active since we discovered them, but they have never responded to any of our team members. Perhaps you would like to see them. As they walked through the station corridors toward the excavation site, Jamin felt the strange tingling in his head growing stronger. It was the same sensation he had experienced back on Earth, but much more intense now. Something was calling to him from deep within the ancient ruins. The moment Jamin entered the crystal chamber, everything changed. The massive formations that had glowed with soft blue light suddenly blazed like miniature suns. The alien team members stepped back in shock as energy patterns danced across the chamber walls. By the 7 moons, whispered Keshian, in 3 months of study, the crystals never reacted like this to any of us. Jamin approached the largest crystal formation, feeling drawn to it like metal to a magnet. As he got closer, the ancient symbols carved around its base began to shift and rearrange themselves. The alien scholars watched in amazement as hieroglyphs that had resisted translation for weeks suddenly became clear and readable. Commander Valterra, Jamin said quietly, reading the flowing script that now made perfect sense to him. These aren't just ancient ruins. This is a message specifically written for my species. That's impossible, Valterra replied. These structures are over 3 million years old. Your species would have been nothing but primitive ancestors then. But, as Jamin continued reading, the truth became undeniable. The ancient text told the story of a species that had once served as guides for the galaxy. Beings with the unique ability to perceive hope and meaning even in the darkest times. They were called the Beacons, and they had helped countless civilizations survive existential crises that would have destroyed them. Dr. Kim, came Minho's voice through the communication link from the human ship. Your brain activity is off the charts. The crystal's energy signature is synchronizing with your neural patterns. Jamin placed his hand on the crystal surface, and suddenly, the chamber filled with images, visions of ancient Earth, of humans working alongside alien species, of great ships carrying human guides to distant worlds in need. But then came darker visions, a terrible enemy that fed on despair. Civilizations falling not to weapons but to hopelessness, and humanity's ancestors making the ultimate sacrifice to save the galaxy. The beacons, Jamin whispered, understanding, flooding through him, the legends your people tell about mysterious guides who appear in times of darkness. Those weren't myths. Those were stories about us, about humans. Keshin's translation device worked frantically as more symbols became clear. The text says that when the great darkness returns, the beacons will awaken to their purpose once more. It speaks of Earth as the hidden garden where the beacon species was preserved. Commander Valterra felt her exoskeleton tingle with a mixture of fear and wonder. You mean to say that your species, which we thought was primitive and isolated, are actually the legendary beacons from our oldest stories? It explains everything, Jamin said, his voice filled with awe. Why Earth was quarantined by advanced civilizations, why we were left alone to develop naturally. It wasn't abandonment, it was protection. Someone was keeping us safe until we were needed again. The crystal network throughout the chamber responded to his words, sending pulses of energy through subspace that could be felt across the galaxy. On distant worlds, other beacon sites activated, confirming what the ancient texts had promised. The Guardians had returned. Dr. Choi, Yunying's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth. Jamin, we're receiving confirmation. Signals from monitoring stations across 17 star systems. Whatever you just activated, it's connecting to a network that spans the entire galaxy. As the truth sank in, both human and alien team members realized they were witnessing a moment that would change galactic history forever. Humanity wasn't just making first contact, they were reclaiming their ancient role as the galaxy's spiritual guardians, the beacons of hope in an often dark universe. The question now was, what darkness were they being called to face? The emergency alert reached the Galactic Council chambers just as Dr. Choi Yunyong was explaining humanity's role as the ancient beacons. The massive holographic display filled with red warning signals from across the galaxy, each one representing a star system that had suddenly gone silent. Counselors, announced the communications officer, his voice tight with panic. We've lost contact with the Rigel mining colonies. All 7 stations stopped responding at exactly the same time. Commander Valterra's claws clicked nervously against her console. What do you mean? Stopped responding. Equipment failure. Attack. No sir, that's the strange part. The last transmissions show normal operations, and then ... nothing. Not destruction. Not distress calls. They just stopped talking. Dr. Kim Tae-hwan, participating via hologram from the human research vessel, pulled up data on his portable screen. Commander, we're seeing similar reports from the Vega system. The research outposts, there have gone completely quiet. Within hours, the reports multiplied. The Outer Rim territories, the frontier mining worlds, even some of the more established colonies, all falling silent in the same mysterious way. Rescue ships were dispatched immediately, but what they found defied explanation. Captain Zorthok of the rescue vessel Swift Thunder transmitted his report with a voice full of confusion and fear. Council, I'm standing in the main square of New Rigel Colony. There are over 50,000 people here, and they're all, sitting, just sitting, and staring at nothing. Are they injured? Poisoned? Demanded Veltara. No, Commander, they're physically fine. They respond to direct physical contact. They'll eat if you put food in their mouths. But it's like they've forgotten why they should want to do anything. They just sit there with empty expressions, like they can't remember what the point of living is. Dr. Jamin Kim felt a chill run down his spine as he studied the ancient texts in the beacon chamber. The symbols were changing again, revealing new sections that he hadn't been able to read before. Commander, Feltara, I think I know what's happening. The beacon records mention something called the Void Collective. Keshin's 4 eyes widened in recognition. The Void Collective, That's from the oldest legends. The enemy that feeds, not on bodies or resources, but on the will to exist itself. The ancient texts flowing across Jamin's mind painted a terrifying picture. The Void Collective wasn't a traditional enemy that could be fought with weapons or shields. It was something far worse, a force that attacked consciousness itself, draining civilizations of their sense of purpose until they simply gave up on existing. According to these records, Jamin continued, his voice growing more urgent. The Void Collective appears every few million years. It spreads from system to system, not through conquest, but through a kind of spiritual plague. People don't die, they just lose the ability to care about living. More reports flooded the council chambers. The Centauri trade routes had gone quiet. The academic colonies in the Tau Ceti system were no longer responding. Entire populations were being found in the same condition, alive but empty, as if someone had stolen their souls. Dr. Yoon Soyoung, monitoring the situation from Earth's lunar station, made a disturbing discovery. The pattern of affected systems isn't random. The Void Collective is moving in a spiral pattern toward the galactic core, consuming the outer territories first. Our military forces are useless against this, admitted General Carthex, the Council's chief military advisor. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't attack your body but your reason for living? Our soldiers arrive at affected worlds and within hours, they're sitting on the ground, staring at nothing. Commander Veltera studied the tactical displays with growing desperation. What stopped it before? The beacon records must contain some information about how previous civilizations survived. Jamin's connection to the crystal network deepened as he searched through millions of years of stored information. The truth he found was both hopeful and terrifying. Only the beacons ever successfully repelled the Void Collective. But the cost, double quotes, he paused, processing the devastating history. Every time it appeared, entire beacon populations sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy. That's why humanity was hidden away. We're the last beacon species left. The chamber fell silent. As the implications sank in, the legendary guides that every civilization remembered in their myths had all died fighting this same enemy, over and over across the ages. Humanity had survived only because their ancestors had been hidden away on Earth, preserved for this exact moment. How many systems have we lost? Asked Veltera quietly. 47 confirmed, with more going dark every hour, replied the communications officer. At this rate, the Void Collective will reach the core worlds within weeks. Dr. Park Min-ha, voice came through the communication link from Earth, filled with determination. Then we need to act fast. The beacon records show that humans have a natural resistance to the Void's influence, our ability to find meaning and hope even in hopeless situations. That's exactly what's needed to fight this thing. As if responding to their conversation, the beacon crystals throughout the chamber began to resonate with a new frequency. The ancient network was preparing for war, and humanity was about to step into their destiny as the galaxy's last line of defense against an enemy that consumed hope itself. The darkness was spreading, but the beacons were finally awake. Dr. Yoon Soyoung floated weightlessly in the beacon chamber. Her mind stretched across impossible distances through the ancient crystal network. Around her, 100 human volunteers from every nation on Earth had linked their consciousness to the galactic beacon system. Each person glowed with soft blue light as their thoughts traveled faster than any spaceship to reach civilizations under attack by the Void Collective. I can see them, Soyoung whispered to the monitoring team back on Earth. The hegemony colonies in Sector 7. The Void is there, spreading through their minds like poison, but they're still fighting it. They just need to remember why life matters. Across the galaxy, the Void Collective had consumed over 200 star systems, Billions of beings sat in empty silence, their will to exist drained away by an enemy that fed on despair itself. Traditional weapons were useless against something that attacked the very idea of having a reason to live. But humanity possessed something unique. The stubborn refusal to give up hope even when hope seemed impossible. Dr. Jamin Kim, now permanently connected to the primary beacon on Kepler-4 for Tabi, felt his consciousness touch the minds of a Zenthari research station under attack. The alien scientists were beginning to succumb to the void's influence, their complex thoughts dissolving into meaningless static. No, Jamin projected through the beacon network, his human perspective cutting through the growing darkness like a searchlight. Your research matters. The discovery you made last week about crystal formation could save thousands of lives. Your daughter back home is waiting for your next letter. Your colleague Veshton still needs your help with the quantum equations. One by one, the Zenthari researchers blinked and looked around in confusion, as if waking from a terrible dream. The void's influence began to weaken as they remembered their connections to each other and their work. Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds. Dr. Park Min-ho reached out to a dying colony, where families had forgotten why they loved each other. Through the beacon network, he reminded them of shared meals, children's laughter, and the simple joy of watching sunsets together. Dr. Kim Tae-won connected with warrior societies that had lost their sense of honor, helping them remember the friends they protected and the principles they defended. The humans are doing something impossible. Commander Veltara reported from her position coordinating the rescue efforts. Everywhere their consciousness touches, the Void Collective retreats. They're not fighting it directly, they're teaching other species how to resist it. Dr. Choi Yoon-young, leading the beacon operation from the lunar station, explained what was happening to the assembled Galactic Council. The Void Collective feeds on despair and meaninglessness. But humans have evolved to find purpose and connection, even in the worst circumstances. We're sharing that ability with every species we encounter. The ancient beacon network, dormant for millions of years, blazed with life as human thoughts flowed through its crystalline pathways. Where other species saw only darkness and futility, when faced with the void, humans perceived opportunity and hope. They became living lighthouses, broadcasting the simple but powerful message that existence had meaning. Look at this data, said Dr. Lee Hyjin, monitoring the galactic situation from Seoul. The Rigel colonies are back online. The Vega research stations are resuming normal operations. Wherever our people have made contact, entire populations are recovering. The Void Collective, starved of the despair it needed to survive, began to retreat toward the galactic rim. Its influence weakened as more and more civilizations remembered why they chose to exist. The ancient enemy that had consumed galaxies found itself unable to feed in the presence of humanity's infectious optimism. Incredible, whispered Keshin, watching the tactical displays as dark system after dark system began to shine with renewed activity. In all the legends, the beacons were described as mysterious saviors who appeared in times of crisis. We never imagined they would be so, familiar. Dr. Jamin Kim, his consciousness still stretched across the galaxy, addressed the assembled fleet through the communication network. We're not just repelling the Void Collective, we're teaching the galaxy something our ancestors knew, that consciousness isn't just awareness. It's the choice to find meaning in existence, to connect with others, to believe that tomorrow can be better than today. As the crisis passed, the beacon network remained active. Human volunteers took turns maintaining the galactic spiritual defense system, their thoughts creating a web of hope and purpose that would protect against future attacks. The Void Collective, denied its food source, retreated to the spaces between dimensions, where it would wait for another opportunity that might never come. The Galactic Council officially recognized Earth as the beacon homeworld, and humanity took its place as the galaxy's spiritual guardians. But they did so, not as conquerors or rulers, but as friends and teachers. Dr. Park Min-ho, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador, addressed the assembled civilizations from the Grand Council chambers. We're not here to control or command anyone. We're here to remind the universe that no matter how dark things become, there's always a reason to keep going. Every species has value, every individual matters, and hope is always worth fighting for. The ancient prophecies had been fulfilled. The beacons had returned to guide the galaxy through its darkest hour, and in doing so, they had revealed that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or warfare, but the simple, stubborn belief that life was worth living. The stars shone brighter.